We should start explaining.
We're back.
We're back.
no, but okay.
Wait, Mark. I just started recording.
Explain.
I just started recording.
I was just going to say the Solomon and the fucking baby who
you guys
the
get a
two
break.
moms are the two moms that are fighting over the baby.
Right.
And wisdom is him saying, well, you know, I'm just going to chop this baby in half and give half to each of you. Now, does that seem reasonable? No, not at all. And truth would be like, that's fucking stupid. But wisdom says no, because then the mother who actually cares for this child doesn't say, no, please don't do that. Give it to her.
Right. That's a good example. We were talking about the difference between wisdom and truth. Sometimes they're not the same thing. That's my only point.
I would argue.
All right. We're back. Episode 40.
40.2. 40B.
Yeah, this is 40, part 2. Radical agnostic. Da-da-da-da-da. Ideology goes to die. John, Mark, this is the other guy. Blah, blah, blah thing.
I see how it is.
All right, guys.
No, wrong!
Start over. So we're back, people, and we have a few more topics to cover.
Like you do.
Now, if you guys have anything you want to shout out right now to get into, we can do that. We can still do more Trump. I mean, is he really? Are we scared now? Are we starting to get kind of freaked out about the guy? Is he a demagogue? Is he mobilizing the radical right and racism and all that stuff?
One thought I had recently, because I was watching a show called Transparent, which no one else at this table has seen, but I think is an awesome, if incredibly depressing show.
Go ahead.
As part of that show, they do flashbacks to the 30s, where there was an actual institute, it was called like the Institute for Sexual Research or something, that was like decriminalizing homosexuality and getting people to have like permits to be, at the time, what was called transvestitism, or being what at the time was called transvestite, and doing a lot of studies on things like sexual reassignment surgery and stuff. That happened in the 20s and 30s, and then the books got burned by the Nazis as the Nazis took over.
It was in Germany?
In Munich.
Oh.
In Munich, of all fuck, second only to Berlin for being very Nazi.
Well, yeah. And
what's the connection to
that? Our culture, like once again, we are, gay marriage is legal, as I would argue it should be. Transgender people are achieving more acceptance than they've ever had. One can argue that it's not enough or whatever, but more, we are becoming a more open and tolerant society of those kinds of differences. And will there be a snapback?
Backlash.
Oh, and look at Trump saying he wants to round up the Muslims and put them in camps.
So because that's what the Weimar Republic, which was previous to Hitler, was like. And Hitler thought that it was very decadent, and the people that were supporters of his thought it was very decadent and liberal. And
Hitler thought Germany was going to be
huge. Socialists.
Yeah. Hated the fucking socialists. Sexually, wrong. The mores were all fucked up, and so that's what you get. And that's what a lot of people think of today. Like you're allowing gay marriage and you're allowing people to have, sex changes, and it's very decadent and fucked up.
Isn't there always pushback in everything?
My question is this. Is the radical right in this country, let's say the Nationalist Front or what have you, sort of racist, nationalist, kind of blinders on kind of fellows, nicest way to say it, is that growing, shrinking, or the same as it's been for the last few decades?
I think it's growing in direct response to the other side, which you said you were going to complain about growing.
Right.
Eddie? I think it used to be that it was a little bit more clearly delineated.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like the Tea Party is not inherently racist.
No.
But, a lot of the Tea Party is super duper racist.
Right.
So, now we've got, is it growing? Well, that core is probably the same size it was before. It's just now you've got this attached thing where it's they're pretty close to them, though. Mark, you're not Stormfront, but you're pretty close to it.
I don't think it's growing. I think it's maintaining the same that's always been. But what is happening is it's both sides are becoming more vocal.
Right.
So people who have these feelings are more apt to address them and say them, and they're not as worried what other people are going to think of them. And the same with liberals. On the left, it's becoming very more vocal to criticize people and say they are racist for whatever belief they have, even if really, if you examine it, it's not really, or it's a very mild form of racism.
And they
not to excuse it, but
there is a difference.
Make a quick
devil's advocate point.
And they
I just want to make a quick devil's advocate point, though.
I just want to say that they justify that their extreme liberalism by what they see in the media about the extreme right.
Of course.
And that's what
And
was
the
my
extreme-
monologue at the
and-
beginning of part
and
one
the
was all about.
And the extreme right
Ideology.
justifies their thing because of the extreme left.
Exactly.
Which
They
is,
say,
yes,
look
you're
at this
right.
political correctness gone mad.
Why it's a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I
So
call
Orwell's-
ideology a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy is between the enemies, the left and the right. They hate each other, and that's the conspiracy because they feed off of each other. They wouldn't exist. Men's rights activists wouldn't exist if crazy feminists weren't around, and vice versa.
Well,
so,
also,
so wait, no, Brian, what was your devil's advocate?
Can we stop applying the term racism to people who are afraid of the influx of Islam? Islam is not a fucking race.
All right, but
There's no specific race of Islam.
Yes,
you're
It's
right.
a fucking ideology. It's an ideology. It's
but what
a
it's
religion.
also called is xenophobia. So
You could-
let's
well,
say
then
you're
call
absolutely
it
right that
xenophobia, or call it prejudice.
the word
or call it-
racism is wrong, but are you okay with calling it xenophobia?
You can call it whatever you want. You're afraid of them. I'm not afraid of Muslims. That's my whole question for America is when did we get so fucking scared?
That's a good point.
When did we get so scared of everything? What words? We're scared of words now. You can't even say something for fear of fucking offending somebody.
Yeah.
Which is why, you know what, honestly,
And the
which
right
is why I've
is
gotten
scared.
a lot quieter.
Well, you're portraying the fear on the left, which is of words and concepts.
The left is afraid of everything.
yeah.
The left actually believes that you have a better chance to survive in an active shooter situation by hiding scared under a fucking table than fighting back.
Right.
That's how polluted they are with fear. The right is polluted with the same fear. It just manifests itself in an angry way.
Right.
Instead of this pitiful come fucking save me my government way.
Right.
Both of them to me are equally sickening.
Very, very well put.
I hate that left liberal afraid. Please help us. Somebody take care of us. Don't
We're
say anything
victims.
offensive.
We're
Victim.
yeah.
Like let's all play up the victim role. I hate you guys. I'm just going to say it. And the crazy ass right that hates everybody and is scared of everybody and wants to reap
Who looks
the
different from
benefits and the
them.
profits of war and capitalist imperialism in the Middle East, but they don't want to take on any of these fucked up refugees. And then you're wrong, man.
Yeah.
Then you make me sick. If you want to hate people just because of that they believe differently than you, or they look differently than you, or they're trying to cross the border from Mexico because life sucks down there and they want a better one up here, and you hate them for that,
Well, look.
then I can't relate to you either. Then I fucking hate you too.
We've done this dance before, and Dan Carlin made me aware of something. In 1953 or 4, during the Eisenhower administration, a law was passed, supported by Eisenhower, and passed unanimously by both houses of Congress. A unanimous vote, the House and the Senate, to make it illegal to belong to the Communist Party in this country. That was a law.
That's a fear-based law right
Oh,
there.
the unanimity of it is shocking to me. There was no Bernie back then? I guess not. Because, I mean, everyone voted for it? Wow, that must have been, I mean...
Was that the McCarthy era? That whole
Certainly.
the
Certainly
red,
was.
the red,
I think that got passed
the
shortly before
Red
McCarthy
Scare,
rose.
right?
The Red Scare.
The Red Scare.
That's what it
The
was.
House-
Oh.
It was
immediately-
illegal in this nation, the freest nation on the world, quote unquote, to belong to the Communist Party. That was a war on ideas. That was a war on ideas.
Well, and also, so Ronald Reagan was the president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time. And he was the one who was basically in charge
Blacklist.
of sending people's names into the government who were suspected of being communists.
that son of a bitch.
Dalton Trumbo was one of them. He was a writer. He wrote
I
Johnny's
know
Guy's
Dalton
Gun.
Trumbo is.
There's a very good movie about him right now out in the theaters.
Now, looking back, is
and-
there any intelligent conservative who could, I want to know, who can tell me that policy in the 50s was actually benefited us and in the long run was a good thing? Because looking back, to me, it seems like it was way overblown. Maybe they'll say we stopped some spies from getting in. I don't know.
I think
I
that's
don't know.
why it was called the Red Scare instead of the Red Threat.
Yeah.
Because the threat's real and a scare is.
Yeah.
And my point being that fear always drives you to do something reckless.
Right.
So you see reckless talk from both sides, like let's just get rid of constitutional rights.
Right.
And then on the other side, they're like protect the Constitution, but let's just get rid of constitutional rights.
Ban all guns
Or ban all Muslims,
mosques. Yeah.
or ban all what? Like, why the fuck are we always banning? When did we get so afraid?
Yeah.
What? Don't
Principles
you guys remember?
should be more important than the fear of the moment. Fear is a nonpartisan issue. I mean, you can think of even non-political things that became like crazy, like the satanic panic.
Yeah,
of the
80s.
Y2K.
Yeah, Y2K.
No,
Exactly.
But also,
We had a Y2K party. I was so wrecked.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, I have pictures of it. The four of us sitting around the table. I took pictures of everyone.
It was fun.
but what people don't seem to understand too, and politicians included, or maybe they do, and it's cynical. But
Well, you're including politicians as people?
yeah, I know.
Stop.
But
You're being very nice today.
but
The
I have a
alien
bone to
leaders
pick
didn't
that's
with
teach
that.
them enough.
that's the point of terrorism. Terrorism is trying to get you to change things out of fear.
Politically,
That
especially.
is what it fucking is.
Exactly.
So when you do that, when you use your fear to affect some sort of change, whether on the left or the right, you are giving into terrorism, saying terrorism works.
You're literally
Keep doing it.
what the enemy wants you
You know,
to do.
and you know what's cool? Like, you alluded to growing up as a military brat on military bases, and I'll tell you what, I was surrounded by dudes who always told me not to be afraid of these dudes. They told me that not only were we tougher than them, and that's why they hit us like this when we were vulnerable. They told me they're like the kid who kicks you in the nuts when you're not looking. He can't fight you. He's afraid of you.
Yeah.
You're bigger than him. You're tougher than him. You're stronger than him. You're more resilient than him. Don't be afraid of him. When they do this stuff, it's to make us afraid.
Well, it's
Hold your head
interesting.
up. Do whatever you're going to do. Live your life.
You know,
And if you find yourself face to face with these guys, then
You know-
then give them a little freedom.
they've done some studies. Special forces guys per capita see far more action and therefore tragedy than regular military folk. And special forces guys and gals.
Now.
I don't know if there are any
Now,
gals yet.
like currently.
Currently.
That probably wasn't always the case.
Oh yeah,
but
Now they see more act. They see more crazy
because
shit.
it's that kind of war.
They have a much lower percentage of PTSD than the regular Army, Navy, Air Force guys. And the theory behind that is that special forces people are on the offensive. They're the hunters. They're the ones who are going out to do a mission and to cause violence. And the other guys that aren't the guys on the base and on these forward operating bases and stuff, they get attacked. They're the ones who get harassed by the enemy. So they're always sort of on the defensive. And the theory is that being on the defensive and not being allowed to take a proactive approach towards the enemy is one of the contributing factors to PTSD. Now, it's probably also just that, I don't know if this is controversial, but special forces guys are just made of tougher stuff. That's how they pass those tests.
Have you seen that quote about out of 100 guys, 80 of them are cannon fodder. They shouldn't even be there.
Right.
And there's like this many that are warriors.
Yeah.
But there's that one guy.
Who's like
And
RoboCop.
he's the guy who's going to get the rest of those guys home.
Right.
Those special forces guys, they're all that one guy.
So,
It's like the
Well,
dentist.
but also
the dentist who won the Medal of Honor.
all right.
The dentist?
Yeah,
But-
World War II. Pretty good story.
Audie Murphy?
No, although Audie Murphy was the single most decorated soldier of World War II, if I recall.
Right. But when you say
Audie
PTSD,
Murphy.
I think you're also making a mistake in the fact that it's not PTSD doesn't always mean that you are fearful and traumatized and you are,
No.
you can also become someone who is very quick to shoot, is very quick to, you're
Certainly.
always on the defensive and waiting for someone to do something for you to, take them out.
For sure.
So-
No, it doesn't
overall-
mean you're like that. You're always scared. It just
But
means
that's-
that you've been.
No,
you've been
but what he was saying
traumatized
was
by
that.
the event.
But what he was saying was the special ops people are made of tougher stuff because they're on.
But that wasn't my point.
They're on the
That was
offensive,
secondary.
and they.
Yes,
I
that.
know, but
Offensive.
they're going. So like the people in the regular army are defending. And living in a
Right.
kind of normal world, and then when these attacks happen on them,
It's a
then they get
surprise.
PTSD, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that happened." It's like, well, PTSD also happens to where it's like, "No, fuck them. I hate those people. I'm gonna take them out."
Yeah.
But
You know
remember,
what I mean?
but
So
remember that
it's-
PTSD is when it rises to the level of disorder. So
Correct.
So,
so what's disorder
but-
in war?
Right, but
in war, you have these people
Right.
who are doing the mission that you want them to do. Now you bring them home, and they're still operating under those influences. And as that, you're going to say that person has PTSD.
I think what John's saying, I'll frame it in a different way. Let me put it into football. Like if I'm playing wide receiver and you're throwing me the ball, I catch the ball over the middle, and Mark is the linebacker, and you fucking destroy me. Okay, I'm like, all right, I got wrecked by this guy. It fucked me up. But the guy's Eddie's on the sideline. He's the backup quarterback, And if you could just sneak around and lurk around and then wreck Eddie on the sideline, it probably is going to fuck him up a little more than it's going to fuck me.
No,
up.
I-
in the
no,
context
I-
of the game.
I mean, I'm part of the team, but I'm just sitting over here on the bench.
It's
I'm not out here
right.
throwing down.
Context changes the-
I get what John was saying, and I don't
But
disagree.
Mark,
No.
the point though, like the two responses you're talking about, like John was not trying to say that they become necessarily like scared, rabbits
It's
as
the
being
context.
PTSD.
It, like, has to
PTSD
do
can
with
go
the
in lots of
mindset
different
going
ways.
in.
But the mindset going in, he's saying, may affect the mindset coming out.
Yeah.
Now, the mindset coming out when it rises to the level of disorder, it is extreme. So it may be extreme, like chick motherfuckers, or maybe extreme, like oh my god.
Yeah.
And
So he
one
agrees
could
with you.
one could analogize that to, if you wanted, and I'm not going to pick sides here, but I'm just going to say, to kind of how the right and the left respond differently to fear. One wants to take one group of
Right.
fear, so
That's
but it's
bringing
still
it around.
but it's still
But
a
fear-
wrong response to that
Well,
fear.
let me try to
Yeah.
clarify
Both
so
are
you
wrong.
don't think I'm arguing with you, John.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't.
really arguing with
I don't.
you. I'm just saying that the idea that these guys are emotionally or physically or whatever better quality than these other people, which could be the case.
Physically, well, it is the case.
Well,
That's
they're-
why
well,
they were able
no,
to
they're
fight.
the 1% war
but there's
fighters.
also
That's why
there's
they're
also
there.
people in the normal army that don't want to be in that.
Right.
They're probably just as fucking good,
There's
right?
a few, yeah.
Yeah, this is
So
but they
there's
haven't-
also people that are probably just as good, if not maybe better than special ops, that hate the fucking military and don't want to serve at all.
Yeah. And they become
Not
athletes
saying.
and
But
champions.
those guys, as far as what the military's mission is, those are the dudes that have risen to the top of that
No,
mission.
no, I
So
get
they are the 1%.
No, I get that, but what I think John's idea of, and this is the thing: if you are, no matter where you are in the military, postmaster general, fucking whatever, works for Wendy's, if you have a normal set of life. You go into work every day and nothing major happens.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody yells at you or the boss fucking tells you you're fucking up or
Everybody
whatever.
here, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
us,
whatever.
normal
No
fucking
big
people.
deal. And then one day at work, some dude comes in and starts fucking shooting at everybody and killing people that you work with, and you're gonna be a little traumatized.
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah.
You're just gonna be like, wow, that was fucked up. Like
Yeah.
that's not something I'm used to.
Fucked up.
Whereas, like he was saying about special ops or anyone that's sent to do a offensive mission, then you are going out and that is your environment.
Yeah.
You are going out to cause
no.
destruction,
Wait, hold on.
damage.
Time out.
But
Time
that-
out.
yeah,
Time out.
that's the same thing I'm saying.
PTSD is separate.
I'm
from
not
trauma.
talking about
All right,
PTSD now, Eddie.
Okay, just being very clear.
Okay,
so I'm just
I'm
confused
not-
why you're not.
Because
Well, maybe because what we're trying to figure out is why one group of guys seems more predisposed to it than the other, and that's not a bad argument for why, because that's their
Well,
whole.
And Mark is also raising an important point that going out and doing the killing could be considered itself a sort of pathology.
Right.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
okay, so these people have this. It's good in wartime.
Right.
You want that in wartime.
We
You
call
want
it-
those people coming back to your country and living in your fucking neighborhoods and with you?
yeah,
Do you?
I do. I got friends who did that.
Yeah,
My-
but-
my
but Mark-
dad did.
Brian,
but
Brian,
Mark
I'm not
raises
saying I'm not saying that they're all fucked
Yeah,
up
yeah.
and they shouldn't have that chance and whatever, and we should keep them. But
It does
I think
go
it is.
against
I
our
do think that
public
we
values.
need to maybe evaluate those people, make sure that they're and not like that they're dangers to us, but that they're okay themselves.
Yeah.
That they have
And they're not
weathered
gonna
this
need to go
fucking
out
these
and do it
experiences,
in the
and they're
homeland.
just okay, and we can give them help, treatment, whatever. If they're not,
Yeah, I think honestly, because I follow some of these sites about guys like this, and they're like everything else. War oddly drives man's evolution, like scientifically, medically,
Yeah.
ethically. It really does in this weird way. And they're really learning to watch out for each other and take care of each other, man. Like 22 suicides a day it's a lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what they're looking at. And I think these guys, though, the reason that the special forces guys and the hardcore operators is because this is kind of probably what they've always wanted to do. So
Yep. That's what they all say.
and they kind of know, like they have a mindset, like they know how horrible
This
it
is
is
from the first
Okay,
few
so, well,
episodes.
this
This is what I was trying
Yeah.
to say about soldiers. I was
Those
like, it's not
guys-
politically correct to say
But this is
that
my-
some soldiers want to kill.
Well, and
they
I'm just
want
saying,
to
offering that
cause
as an.
havoc.
I don't even saying they
And
want to
I-
cause havoc. This is just what they do.
Yeah,
There's
they
some-
want
there's
to
some-
save each other.
there's
They
some-
want to be in the worst possible position. Where
There's some
it's-
people that are psychos and want to kill people.
Right.
Sometimes maybe they end up in the military.
those-
Sometimes
those-
they end up
I'm
in
not
jail
But
or
I'll,
whatever.
but I'll
Yeah.
say this though: by the time those guys, they don't make those tier 1 operator groups. They don't make the SEAL
No,
teams.
but-
They
but-
don't. They don't
'Cause
make
you have
the
to be
Green
brave.
Berets.
But that's not my point. I was just
This
responding to
conversation
John.
started with a statistic. You seem to be Mark. You seem to be undermining the foundation of the statistic. That is its own point. That said,
I think
none
we're
of us
all-
are from the military. We all, I think, all support the troops in the sense that
They're doing something that is
Yeah.
very hard.
I
on the
think you're-
flip side, we should probably shut up about it because none of us are in the military.
Yeah.
I
and
think
have
you're confused with anything that any of my points.
No,
was trying to
I
make.
agree. I agree.
So
I think
let me
we're all
say
in
this
agreement.
one last
no,
thing.
Mark, we gotta
No,
move on.
let me say one last thing. Because the idea that special ops are these fucking people that are better than in whatever way these other people, and they have these heightened abilities or
Better
whatever,
suited to that
better-
job.
even better suited to that job. What happens a lot of times is people go, "Oh, they're okay. They're fucking tough. They don't need our fucking help.
Yeah.
They don't need that fuck. They don't need us at all. They're fine."
Some of them
Guess
do.
what happens to a lot of those fucking people?
No, you're right.
Because we think that way.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
but what I'm contending is though they're starting to look out. They get that,
Yeah.
and I don't think that they're. I think your new. I don't want to use the words warrior poet, but that's a lot of those guys tend towards that,
No, there's plenty of.
and
plenty of
I
guys like
think
that.
they're not.
Well,
Those
sure, if
dudes amongst themselves don't have that tough image as much as society has that we're
Right.
tough image. So they're starting to take care of each other.
We're all in
Yeah,
agreement.
that's what
Mark
I'm
is just
saying,
saying
yeah.
that the public image doesn't.
Yeah, no, it
usually
doesn't help those
understand
guys.
that.
No, it
yeah,
doesn't.
that's-
It
that's all
doesn't
I'm
help
saying.
those
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
And a warrior poet, a guy that you should check out if you haven't, is called Bill Shields. He's a very good military soldier in Vietnam that's started writing poetry, and I think he does prose too. Most of his stuff is on Rollins's 21361 or whatever his press is.
So, one of my favorite content creators in the world is Dan Carlin, who describes himself as fiercely independent, and he is. He has 2 podcasts. One's called Hardcore History. Joe Rogan talks about it all the time. Everyone loves it now. This dude is taking the world by storm. Millions of people listen to this, and Hardcore History talks about everything. It's World War I. The Wrath of the Khans is one of them, Genghis Khan. All these different awesome stories.
The Wrath of the God.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
It's a good hook anyway.
Yeah, and now he's got one
You know,
about...
supposedly 2% of the population can be traced back to Genghis Khan or something.
Yeah. And he supposedly, his people killed by his command upwards of 50 million people. 50 to 100. It's thought. And he has like the second or third largest empire of all time in world history.
Guess I got to read a little more about old
Oh,
Genghis.
Genghis. A lot of them call him Genghis.
He invented that game.
Dan Carlin's...
Yeah, except in Genghis Khan's version, if you knocked over the tower, they cut off your head.
Yeah, and stuffed your... All right. So Dan Carlin's other podcast is Common Sense, and that's actually the one I prefer. It's a shorter one, which talks about once every 2 weeks he releases one, talks about current events. He's talking about President Obama's recent address on the terrorist situation, and he gave the greatest analogy ever. So when a dog is infested with fleas, right? The fleas are biting the dog, and they do some damage to the dog, and they can give him infections and stuff too. But the real damage, for the sake of the analogy, is the dog biting and scratching herself to get rid of the itching of the fleas, and the dog will tear herself apart, just trying to stop that feeling.
Hence the cone.
The cone, exactly. And if Islamist terrorists are the fleas, and America is the dog, everything depends on our reaction to the fleas. And I think I'm with Mark here more than ever before in terms of this foreign policy situation, because he likes to bring up the fact that Obama's been prosecuting this drone strike program overseas. And like most liberals, I think right now are kind of in this boat. They'll say, we gotta kill ISIS, but we got to do it with a coalition, and we got to use airstrikes, and we can't start a ground war. Meanwhile, I believe that every Republican candidate has openly advocated for a ground war. So now we're going to send 50,000 troops to Iraq and Syria, and we're going to start a long war. It's going to be very much like the last two. the thousands of men and women will die, and families will be ruined. The suicide rate of soldiers will go up. The economy will go further into this shithole because it'll cost another $10 trillion. All that good stuff.
And most importantly, what we'll do is we'll create more terrorists.
Right. So I agree with the SEAL Team 6 guy on Joe Rogan that we could eliminate ISIS. Sure we could. 100,000 troops over there, international coalition. We could kill every last fighting man in ISIS. I believe you. And then you've chopped a head off the Hydra, and what happens next is well known, that another fucking head sprouts up. It was Al-Qaeda, it was Taliban, it was ISIS, it was Mujahideen, in the 80s for the Russians. It's always going to be another group. There's a systemic problem here. You could kill ISIS, and then you'll create 3 more. So now I'm starting to think that, and a lot of liberals, Noam Chomsky, have been talking about this for a long time. This drone strike program is creating more terrorists every day. 80 to 90% of the targets hit are not terrorists. That creates recruits for ISIS. So I don't know. Dan Carlin said, what if you had, and he's not a liberal, guys. I mean, he's right in the middle. He said, what if you had a presidential candidate who said, let's stop being afraid. Let's stop protecting ourselves, even. And he was being a little bit extreme in that statement, but the point was, no such candidate would ever see the light of day. He would immediately be panned by everyone on the left and right. You can't say that. You have to put up this whole bluster and bullshit. We're going to fight. We're going to destroy ISIS. But that's what's happening is the dog is tearing itself apart because of the fleas.
Well, what?
The fleas used to be drugs.
No.
The war on drugs has torn apart the Fourth Amendment.
I get that, but his idea that we're supposed to stop fearing, if we just say we're not going to be afraid, what changes? What foreign policy then do we change?
Well, John's initial argument was what's left of the Constitution by the time we're done scratching it to pieces. That was what his initial argument was.
And exactly. Thank you. I got off track.
So we don't change the Constitution.
No, we don't change anything.
Right. So I'm for that.
That's the whole point.
For that. But
the drone strikes
we do change something.
The drone strikes. I mean, Mark, you've been saying for years now that Obama is the same as Bush,
and he is. But let me just say, it's actually not the drone strikes. Drone strikes are part of the problem. The actual problem is our foreign policy in those countries.
Military bases,
drone strikes,
Israel,
are used to make those our foreign policy accomplished.
It's terrorism.
Is to accomplish our foreign policy in those countries
through fear.
Think of there's plenty of countries in the Western world that aren't attacked by the Middle East through terrorists. Cuba. How come there's never been any terrorist acts in Cuba? Venezuela. How come if the terrorists hate the Western world that much,
the dictators
hate us? Why are you might say they're dictators, but also none of those countries have foreign policy in the Middle East where they're trying to affect.
Has there been terrorist attacks in Canada?
Does Canada have any? Is Canada trying to influence
Mexico
anything?
that aren't cartel related?
Maybe a couple.
Yeah,
not in Mexico.
So there's plenty of countries that aren't being attacked because they don't participate in this thing.
Yeah.
If maybe we remember when Iran and us were very big enemies, and then we got the hostage crisis was over, and we stopped fucking with them, and for what
they became like a liberal republic.
How long? From like 1981 till when did we have problems with them again?
Late 90s.
Late 90s. And what had we been doing secretly? Unbeknownst to them, that made us become their enemy again? No, we were also arming Iraq.
Right.
We were also giving them plenty of arms.
And they were at active war with Iraq.
Yeah. So, maybe if we just stop
meddling
with other countries, just try to keep our shit in our country and influence our country.
Now,
and,
Mark,
deal with other countries on, in a...
diplomatic
way,
Mark,
and fucking try to make things better for us, but also try to make things better for them.
So
Don't try to take them over.
What is what is our, just for the lack of any better idea, is corporate imperialism our foreign
That's what
policy?
it is. Manifest destiny, corporal imperialism.
Is that our foreign policy?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to throw it out
that's what-
there
yes.
as?
Part of
That's
it.
what
It's
it
also
is.
750 military bases in foreign countries around the world.
And so really, we are creating empire.
Now-
we have been creating empire,
But Mark,
since probably the last turn of the century, 1900.
all right, Mark, like I said, I'm starting to agree with you on like stopping the drone, like being even more pacifist than we are now. But the strategic problem with that, let's set aside the fact that such a politician would be destroyed in this country by the other party. Let's set that aside, pretend that doesn't exist. But the actual strategic problem, if we pull our bases and our financial support away from Saudi Arabia, and then we do it with Israel. I mean, now the political mess back home from this guy, this president who's doing this, is now gone haywire. He's hated by 98% of the country for these things. Now we've abandoned Israel. We've abandoned our $3.5 billion a year, more than any other country. We give foreign aid to Israel. And nuclear weapons, which they have, but don't have to get them checked by the UN. They're not known, quote unquote, to have nuclear weapons, even though they have nuclear weapons that we sold to them. UN doesn't inspect them. Like we're now demanding the UN should inspect Iran.
Usually
we don't apply that to Israel.
The UN doesn't inspect places that already have nukes. The UN inspects countries that ostensibly don't have nukes that
They're
are
trying
working
to
to get them.
Right.
Israel either has them or doesn't.
Right.
But
No, they have.
like,
But they have
do.
them. Everyone knows.
No,
them.
it's
I know,
100%.
Okay.
They do have
But
them.
they are ostensibly not known to have them. They are not working to build any more. One could argue it's probably because they have plenty.
No, that's not true.
Eddie,
You think they're working to build them?
They are our ally, and so
No, they've got them.
They don't build
They
them.
have them?
just
They
buy
don't
them.
build
probably
them.
are-
That's the
I don't
point.
know. I
They
don't know
don't
that they
build them.
don't build them.
The UN inspector thing, though, is
They definitely aren't
when the
dismantling
countries
them.
were-
Fine, but every other country that has them has to declare having them, literally. There's no other countries that might have them. Israel's the special guy there.
No, there's other countries that might have them that we don't have knowledge
No,
of.
there
India
are.
and Pakistan.
No,
They do have them. They've done tests.
India and Pakistan have them. North Korea has them.
Yeah.
Iran might have
No,
them.
they
We don't
don't.
think they do.
They don't.
No, I'm just saying that
Well,
we don't think
they've never
they have
conducted
them.
a test.
We have right. They've never conducted a test.
So you don't
All
have
our
them if you haven't tested
But
them.
that doesn't mean exactly that they don't have them.
All right,
just
fine.
like. God's never answered my prayer, so
Fine, but
obviously
the
God
point
does
is,
not exist.
But the point is, Mark, for the we do want America to succeed, at least in some
Succeed,
respect.
but
Wait,
not empire, John. Not
fine,
empire.
Fine, but what happens to our economy when we pull
I
out
don't
of the
know
Middle
what
East?
happened to Britain. What's up with the UK that now that they're not a fucking creating empire anymore? How about France? France isn't creating empire.
France
Spain
is still a little
Spain.
bit creating
What
an
about
empire.
Spain?
Aren't they
Wait,
in a
hold
war
on,
in
hold
Angola?
on. You're probably right, but Mark,
What about
so
Holland?
France is not
Amsterdam?
committing empire, and yet France just had a big terrorist attack.
No, there
No,
you
France
go.
is. They're still
that's-
fighting in Angola. Isn't it
But
Angola?
I'm
What
just
if they-
I know, but I'm drawing
What
his
I'm-
point.
Oh.
No, well, I was talking about a
mixed- that's
different
a good one,
point.
Eddie.
Now, that point that you're addressing, yes, that's right, because they're still involved with us, and we are in the UN, so they fucking hate the UN. As
So we should get
Western
rid of the
civilization.
UN?
I'm saying we should withdraw from being such a presence of it.
Well, we're in the Security Council.
going in and fucking being an ally with every single country that goes, hey, they fucked with us. Come on, guys, come help us. We got to kick their ass in this country and bomb them. No,
I wish.
No.
I'm not a fan of isolationism, which is what you're
No, I'm
advocating.
not.
No, that's 100%.
It's,
Yeah,
no,
you're
I'm
pulling
not.
out
Definitionally,
imperialism.
Is Spain, France, discount the UN, but are they actively still trying to create empire?
No.
Are they building are they going into other countries?
They have
and
isolationist
influencing them?
policies.
Yes,
They're
So
isolationist.
So what? Why are we so afraid of that? Why is America so afraid of becoming like Canada?
Well,
Why is
economic-
America really economically? Canada?
Yes.
Oh, they have so many people living in the streets. They have so much fucking despair.
But we
in
want
Canada.
we want a global hegemony. We
No,
want
even-
to
I
shape
mean,
the
That's
course.
right, John, and I think that's fucked up, and we shouldn't do that.
You're right. We should
now,
let
if
Russia
you-
do it.
Fair enough.
Yes, I think
You
we
think
should.
we should let
It's not
Russia
going to
do
be
it.
Russia.
Yes.
It's going to be China.
Russia, China,
Russia's the
whoever.
only one that literally
Let them
just
do
took
it.
over a country.
Let them do it. We build our own
The
shit
Ukraine?
up that they can't
No,
fuck
yeah,
with us.
yeah, they did in
Do you
Ukraine.
understand that?
But they're not
Our big-
China's
Let
a
them-
much bigger
let them,
threat
Let
than
them
Russia.
deal with it. And then
All
they're
right,
going to
calm
have
down.
that.
Wait, hold on,
Calm
hold
down.
on. I would just
No,
like to
I'm
make a
super
point.
at. I can't go down.
I would like to make a point about isolationism and imperialism. I think you can have a non-isolationist policy without necessarily being imperialist.
Right.
I think I would rather.
I wasn't. First off, you're the one placing the word isolationist.
You're
in
talking
my
about
mouth.
pulling out of other countries, not involving in
guys,
their affairs. That's
calm
what that
down.
means.
Let's move
I'm
forward.
talking about
Let's
changing.
progress.
I'm talking
Okay,
about changing the current foreign policy.
Okay. The suggestion I wish we did instead was, rather than we don't like what you're doing, as like, I wish that we would put the money we put into the military into refugees, into saying, look, we think your country is garbage. You're treating your people like shit. So here's what we're going to do. Anyone who wants to leave gets to leave. And you know what? If you just want to sit in the shitty ruins of your country, fine. Or if you want to let other people have a voice, fine.
And that's an argument against whatever I just said.
No, it isn't. He's making his own point.
I'm making a point.
This is
Okay,
Eddie's foreign policy.
That's fine. But that foreign policy is different than what our foreign policy is
agree.
today.
Yeah.
And that's my only point, is the foreign policy that we've been doing and conducting for hundreds of fucking years is not working, and we need to change it.
Well, I'm starting to agree with that. I think
everyone agrees with that,
This
but
is
no
a
one
war.
wants to do it.
If this is a war of ideas, right, and it's against Islamist fundamentalism and other forms, and it used to be communism, and our idea is freedom in its many forms given by the Constitution in this great experiment that we started in 1776, and then France said, hey, that's a good idea, we'll do that too, and it spread like wildfire. If that's what America is, and that's what we're proud of, we cannot be the dog that scratches itself to pieces because of these fleas. We got to be smart. We got to wait 5 days until we can get to the vet and get the anti-flea medication. And that takes 3 weeks to work. And we got to wait those 3 weeks instead of ripping our own fur and ears and legs off.
Except here's the problem with that analogy. We're the dog, right?
Right.
America, we're the dog.
Constitution is our skin.
I don't know if you've ever owned a dog, but try getting a dog to stop doing something.
Yeah.
You know,
That is the problem.
That's why, like
That
I
is the
said, I
problem.
mentioned the cone.
And this
so
leads-
what we need is a
cone.
cone. Who is the cone? Who is going to put that cone on the fucking dog that is America?
You can't. It's a
And say,
paradox
yes,
because
no,
it's freedom.
No, it's not.
If the
is
skin
not.
is freedom,
we need someone
the cone
to
takes
fucking,
away
who cares
freedom.
about that dog. No, it doesn't take away freedom, John.
The cone doesn't take away freedom?
Well, okay, the cone takes away freedom.
The cone takes away freedom.
That was
I
it.
gotta weigh
That
in.
was the first time on the podcast,
The
Mark.
dog is
Mark,
ever-
that's true.
Big moment.
Yeah.
But not I don't know. But what I'm saying is the change in foreign policy.
Yeah, doesn't have to be
Doesn't
a
affect
reduction of
our
our
country,
freedoms.
really
right,
doesn't-
right.
And-
So the cone is a foreign policy.
The
that-
cone is an analogy to that,
Yeah,
and
okay.
not meaning an actual real cone
to,
that's
to get
restricting.
to that that analogy, though, you know, if there's no vet, right, then you can't get rid of the fleas,
Right.
And so tearing yourself apart to get at the fleas becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
Except for what?
So what do you go beyond?
I'm saying
There's
the
no vet.
problem of that analogy is it implies that there's some magical vet out there who, if only we'd stop biting ourselves or put a cone on,
Well, the
then
vet
we could.
is radical agnosticism, isn't it? Isn't it reasonableness? Isn't it the willingness to resist the fear, resist the emotional pull?
Well, I would say instead of the vet, that if you can
Yeah, but
get
we
the
never
dog,
fucking solve anything.
well,
These
that's-
are problems that need solutions,
Right.
man. And we
But
just
if you
sit
can
out
get-
here and
if you
fucking
can
blow
get the
smoke.
dog-
Well, I
But
don't make
but
foreign
if you
policy.
If you can get the dog to just stop scratching and biting, then the natural healing process might be able to kick in.
There's no
Right?
natural healing process.
There's
for
not a
fleas.
natural healing
No.
process, really?
No, well, there
Not for
is.
fleas.
There is. If we're creating the fleas by blowing people up, by raining terror from the skies, and
But that implies that there
imperialism.
wouldn't be terrorism if we weren't doing that.
There might not. I don't know, Eddie. Where did it come from?
It came from.
Well, if you've got the answer, let us know. Where did terrorists come from? I mean, I don't
The
think
Are
it's
you
dog
all
trying
our
to
fault.
say radical Islam?
I
Is
don't
that-
think it's
is
all
that
our
the
fault.
It
decent
comes from
answer?
the dog. I was going to say it comes from religion, actually.
Well,
Yeah.
no, terrorism.
Well, that's okay.
It does.
McVeigh wasn't having his home drone striked,
Right.
and
Right.
he's a fucking terrorist. Now he's not from another country,
He's
but
not
don't
a systematic group of terrorists over 20 years who grow and kill people every day.
because
Was he-
he's
wasn't
in
he a
his own
militia
country.
dude?
He's not in a country where he could
He
get
was
the
a
power of
militia
that.
guy, right?
Yeah.
He might have been.
But how many
He
other
was-
people
he
did the
was-
militia
he
kill?
was
I mean,
in-
it's
he
just
was-
not as serious a problem.
Because he's within the US.
McVeigh was as much of a terrorist as anybody in ISIS.
Yes.
He was in the Christian identity movement, which, if you know about, it's the same as it's.
I'm not denying that
to
McVeigh's a
Christianity
terrorist.
as ISIS is to Islam.
Yeah, I'm not denying that McVeigh was a terrorist. If he blew up that building, he's a fucking terrorist.
So, Eddie, you're in charge of foreign policy. You're in charge of drone strikes, ground war, and let's say military bases and foreign aid. Do you make these big changes I'm talking about? What do you do?
I've long said,
Real quick.
Well, Can I?
Yeah.
I've long said that the only just society is a society you can leave. And that is the fun, because, there's a social contract idea. If everybody in the society wants to have one where, like, you don't have freedom of speech, then it's tough to judge it if everyone wants that. The problem of a society like that is if you can't leave it. Right. If you were like, I'd actually like to be able to say things and not be shot by the government, and you can't leave. You can't go anywhere.
Right.
So I would argue that our foreign policy should be organized around allowing people to get the fuck out of these countries if they can't affect the change they want. If the social contract that living in a place requires them to abide by is one that they can't abide by.
In other words, if it's a battle of ideas, let's give them a better idea. Let's offer them an idea. If you want to come to this idea,
exactly,
come on in.
And it was said earlier, I think it was you, Brian. You were saying that war drives technology. Was that you?
War
or Mark?
drives a lot of things. Yeah,
it was me. I disagree.
Well,
only in the sense of saying
right.
no. Well, yeah, but I'm going to make a broader point. To say it's conflict. The moon race was you could say it was a proxy for war. You could say this and that, but fundamentally it was conflict. So conflict, which war is clearly conflict, so like I'm not disagreeing with you per se. I'm saying conflict does. Well, and so in addition to like, you know what I'd like to see? Why are we not expanding to colonize, other places? Everyone's like, oh, going to space is dumb. You know what? All those disenfranchised young males who get really into ideology because they really want to be a part of something big. Yeah. Why don't we give them something big to be a part of?
Like what?
Let's fucking colonize Mars. Let's fucking go to space. A generational starship. All voluntary.
Dude, it's the first step. It's logical because now it's the first step towards like interplanetary war. we're gonna have to get there.
There's no frontiers.
Dude.
Having frontiers was always the way we got rid of that we allowed disenfranchised people to vent and not become like ridiculous kind of monsters in their own cultures.
Yeah. Okay, so have we allowed disenfranchised people to leave? Because the cavalry used to run up and cut the fucking Indians off from the Canadian border.
But we didn't think the Indians were people. So.
Yeah, the medicine line. They used to cut them off all the time.
We didn't think Indians were people, and I'm not defending that.
No,
but
Brian, and they are currently shutting down visa things to countries that were friendly countries. They're shutting down visas now. You can't go to and from. Before World War I, there was no such thing as a passport. You guys know that? You could just go somewhere.
Bro, see,
you could
sort of
get on a boat.
Sort of, because we used to have quotas.
To a much larger extent. To visit. I'm just saying visiting.
That was always part of my world, though. Because of my dad's security clearance, when we went to Germany, and they would say, like, some of my friends would be like, we're going to Yugoslavia. I can't go without getting special clearance because of my dad's security clearance. So there were a lot of times that that's already been it doesn't seem that foreign to me.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's how it is for the rest of us. I had
also
all kinds
choice.
Of visa trouble
that your dad made, granted, but
I'm just saying though,
choice.
like that to me, it doesn't seem that foreign.
That's just how I grew up. If it's a war of ideas, do not pollute our idea by restricting freedoms and making us more like them.
No, exactly.
You're not getting any argument out of me on that.
No. Suddenly the room goes quiet.
Because I think I'm sorry, man. I just want to before I forget this, because I feel like if one side wants to isn't freedom of religion and thought that's the First Amendment, part of the First Amendment, is it?
Yeah, part of the First Amendment.
Okay, so the right wants to get rid of the first. The left wants to get rid of the second. Everybody's ready to tear
the fourth is already gone from the war on drugs.
It's what's next, man.
Yeah.
Well, they're fucking
voting restrictions.
Is the eighth cruel and unusual punishment? Because that weird detention center in Chicago, and I know people would argue that Guantanamo was, like all these.
That's the right.
So what's
That's
next?
the radical right.
When
Torture.
When are we going to care?
Ban Muslims, shut down mosques. Marco Rubio said they told him, they go, Trump said the other day that we should monitor mosques. You know what Marco Rubio said, and this wasn't covered by the press. He goes, no, we should shut them down, and any other place where they congregate to share these ideas. We should shut down any public place, cafes. This is now. These are credible ideas now in the American political landscape. If someone from the 1990s looked into the future and saw these headlines, they'd be shitting themselves. So, a Republican from the 1990s would be like, "What are you talking about?"
But not a Republican from the 40s.
Yeah, that's exactly, or the 50s.
The 40s because of the Japanese internment camps.
Yeah.
Japanese.
Now I don't know. Maybe
do you see the connection between the right Republicans advocating those sorts of things, which are very unconstitutional, and the left advocating gun control all the time and saying, well, I don't understand why anyone is against this. This is fucking only helping.
That's how the right feels about restricting Muslims, and they're like, I don't understand why you don't think this is smart.
I will make a point of this, though. There is a difference between a principle you may abide by and what the Constitution says. I'm not.
And the Constitution, do you
It
want
does.
to read the Second Amendment?
Yeah, but
Tell
it
me
doesn't.
how it
I'm
doesn't?
I'm
How
agreeing.
it is against?
I know. I agree with you. I agree that the Constitution clearly says that there's a right to bear arms, like very clearly. I'm not. At no point am I going to disagree with
Okay.
that. What I'm saying is that
The
the left
Muslim thing, right.
no, that the left. Like, I guess identify the principle that's being applied here, and I'm not defending the left per se because there's a lot more principles that they just abandoned. But on this specific thing, I would argue that the left is. It's not like they're ignoring the Constitution to some extent, but they're saying I don't see this as a principle. This idea of personal ownership of individual ownership of guns as a principle, I don't hold to that. That's not a principle I support. Whereas if you ask the fucking right wing, if you said is freedom of religion a principle you support, they'd say yes, and then the same fucking time they're saying, well, but we should round up Muslims.
Well, Eddie, let's be clear then. If you were to ask liberals or left, do you feel you have the freedom of self-defense? Do you have the right to defend yourself if attacked?
Let's not
I think
get, can we not
no,
get
it
into
is
this?
the same to say the freedom of religion. Now, if you were to say, do you have the right to be a Muslim? Or do you have the right to own a gun? Those are two different things then.
but the Second
Freedom
Amendment
of
doesn't say
religion
that.
All right,
or-
guys. I don't want to. We've done it too much. We've done the guns too much.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
What I was going to say my perspective on it, but that's not fair.
When are you going to trash the left, man? I keep waiting. I'm fucking bated breath. I
Well,
wanna hear you trash
we've touched on it.
I'm running out of line.
Me and Brian.
To spur that question on, I wanted to say this, and I think the answer is yes, unfortunately. Has liberalism generally led to softness, weakness, entitlement? Let's say on one hand, let's say we all agree that liberalism has led to a lot of good things, because classical liberalism is what the country's based
I'm
on.
not going to argue with that.
But has it also...
Modern liberalism, like now liberalism,
Well,
where
yeah.
it's leading.
Even just the concept of egalitarianism itself. Has that led to weakness, softness, and entitlement? Of course, the answer has to be yes. Now, is it because there's something faulty about liberalism itself? Or is it that it's led to prosperity economically, and prosperity has made us weak and soft? Because we are weak and soft compared to...
I would argue it's a false dichotomy.
Okay.
I would argue that most political systems, especially as they rise in prominence or power, which is not always the same thing, are going to tend towards what I might call stupid shit. The right does, and liberalism and conservatism, I guess, does the same fucking thing of being soft, weak, and entitled. I'm white, so I'm entitled, and fuck you, black people, for getting uppity. I'm soft because I'm going to immediately start being scared of the communists. It's the same. Is it expressed differently? Well, certainly. I mean, these are different movements, so it's going to be expressed differently, right? But I would argue that these movements, these movements are going to tend towards festering, I guess, for want of a better
But
word.
what has led to weakness? Because
What has led to
a
weakness-
Nazi government is a very conservative government.
And they get weak too because they topple
Yes,
because they have their.
Eddie's completely correct. What leads to weakness, and this is what this show is all about, right? Is the fucking fact that people then believe something without questioning it at all. They say, I am a Republican, I am a right wing, blah, blah, blah. All these tenets that they have laid out, this is what we should do, and blah, blah, blah. And the people that are above me and in charge, they're going to help me and they're going to follow these things, and I'm going to be okay because the government's going to protect me. Same on the left, same shit.
Yeah.
I'll get what I think is fairly radical agnostic about this is that in some respects it absolutely leads to weakness because the left is the one that's crying for protect everybody from everything and everything anyone might say that would hurt their feelings. And that's not life, man.
but that's an expression.
But when conservatives get mad about the gay cake and that they...
Oh, I'm not saying that it's... That's
Or
why
no,
I'm
not
saying
even
in
that, John.
some respects.
Not even that.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's not
conservatives-
wholly responsible
The conservatives
for it.
get upset that the fucking Starbucks cup doesn't have a goddamn Christmas
Yeah.
tree on
Right,
it.
right.
So it's
So
You
is
know
it
what I mean?
inherent to either political ideology or is it just both?
extreme liberalism is a direct path to weakness. There's no potholes in that road. It's straight. It's easy to follow. There's no exits. It goes from A to fucking B.
So there's no such-
extreme
yeah.
conservatism, I
Same
think.
thing. Yep.
It's just the same road
Okay.
that goes the different way around the traffic circle, and you meet at fucking
Yep.
at the,
Like a
that
snake eating its
same
own tail.
point. You
So
guys
you-
just came in to
so you
weakness
guys are
from
saying-
opposite sides of the equation.
You guys are saying then that... Because when I think about Nazi Germany. I don't think weakness, really. I think false thinking. I think illogical. I think horrible, mean.
But
are they weak?
No, I'll tell you
they're
why
weak.
they were
They're
weak.
weak in thought.
I'll tell you why they were weak.
Their
Because
beliefs are not fucking strong.
let me just.
But I'm
Maybe
talking
they
about
believe
weakness in
them.
terms of
But
vulnerability.
remember,
Yeah, they
it
became
takes
weak
time.
because of their
Yeah,
lust
they
for
failed.
Lebensraum
They
and
lost.
Lebensraum, superiority. Like they wanted to exterminate whole groups of people. They weren't even
Because they
fucking
were
close to
afraid.
being done. They
They
were
were-
ready to get
yeah.
rid of the Slavs. He was
But
ready to get
remember-
rid of everybody.
But
the
remember
retarded
about Nazism.
But
I mean,
they did become weak because of that. This they spread themselves out. They didn't believe that they could lose, and they stuck to their dogma until they got the Sixth Army fucking destroyed at Stalingrad.
What about this perspective?
just
Go ahead.
do your perspective. But like, for example, the Nazis did not start wanting to exterminate all the Jews. Maybe that was like ultimately his plan or whatever. But like, he didn't get to the final solution immediately. He didn't open with that. He opened with "get the fuck out." And he
Right.
opened with "you're not allowed to own shit."
Right.
Then he went to, well, now you got to go to camps. And then it became, well, the tide is starting to turn because I'm making terrible decisions because I have syphilis in one testicle.
Yeah.
But
And I'm on meth.
But I'm going to say
but,
this though.
So like it takes time to develop. So you're right that at times it was very strong, but it got weak because as a natural consequence
Well,
of its extremism.
Now the killing of the Jews kicked up again in the end, but 42 was the big year.
Yeah,
By far.
But Hitler took power in
In
32.
30.
Right.
Yeah.
But Germany was still doing all right in 42. Things weren't going real bad for them.
No, yeah,
They
yeah.
were kicking
That-
ass in 42.
Yeah.
And that was the height of the extermination. When you look at the
wasn't
bar when you look at the bar, I was just at
Well,
I was at the Holocaust Museum
Yeah.
in Dallas, and they have a bar graph of how many Jews were killed in what year.
Yeah.
And 42, the bar is to the fucking ceiling, and you can sit on top of any of the other ones.
Right, but what year was the final solution implemented?
Well, right at
38.
the end, no, the final solution came like right at the end, 44.
Oh.
Like when they were just they had all the people that were even at the really nice camps, like the guys who had fought in World War I. It wasn't popular, to kill those guys with
yeah,
the Germans because some of them were
veterans,
fucking war heroes. So
yeah.
they sent them off to this other camp in Czechoslovakia, and they were even bussing them. Then they started cleaning out Hungary right at the end because at Auschwitz between March and October of 44, they gassed or killed almost 500,000 Hungarian Jews in just those 4 months.
Now, you guys
And of course-
seem all agreed on this idea that both paths lead to the same conclusion, which is what
They
that
just
word
come
weakness.
in from different sides of the equation.
Now,
And that there's more than two.
Let me propose a theory for explaining why liberalism itself is worse, is actually more likely to lead to what we would call weakness or softness.
I would actually agree, but I just couldn't articulate it well enough.
Well, what I would say, and I don't know if this is true, and this goes back to all my horrible misogynist theories and everything, but it's just that liberalism, to me, embraces traditionally feminine values like compassion, cooperation, equality, fairness, and you can all disagree that those are not feminine, but
No.
they are traditionally feminine. You can't disagree with
But
that.
if you're going to argue with me that compassion
yeah,
and egalitarianism are inherently weak, we're going to have a very
Yeah,
heated
because
discussion.
I don't agree
No,
that those
they're
things
not-
lead to
no,
weakness.
No, they're not weak. They're not weak.
Well, but that's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that
Let him finish.
I'm
But
sort
those
of.
things are the reason we get to weakness, but they're not weak. Like compassion doesn't make you weak, man.
It makes you vulnerable.
Vulnerable and
Vulnerable
weak
is
aren't
not
the same
weak.
thing.
Well, maybe that's what we
'Cause
are
there's a
then right
certain-
now is
in-
vulnerable
in-
because when mass shooters come out and shoot up a mall, maybe those Americans aren't weak. Maybe they're not bad. They're not pussies or something. Maybe they're just vulnerable, and that's why they hide or whatever. So we've got a culture of soft targets. And that might be a side effect. Nothing's perfect. If you take the feminine road and you are compassionate and fair and loving,
so I get what you're
more
saying.
vulnerable.
The reason that we're more vulnerable, like when you see one of these attacks in Israel, like I said last week, 5 old ladies pull out guns and they shoot the guy with the AK that's running into the mall to shoot up the mall.
And by the way, I don't want to live in a society like
No, and I'm not
Israel.
saying you are, but that's like the opposite of what
Yeah.
you're talking
Yep.
about, I think.
For sure.
Like you're vulnerable as a society.
For
They're
sure.
they're not as vulnerable to
Right.
that type of attack as we
And
are.
they're a very conservative
because
society.
If it was for like Israeli guys of our age that are all down for the Israeli cause, patriotic Israelis sitting around the table right now, we're all armed, maybe even with fucking rifles.
Yeah, and
we're walking around the
where your
street.
crutches are. There's an AK.
Yeah,
yeah,
and we're that's
How do you know that's not a gun?
that's our.
and that's kind of a perfect
Because
illustration.
I don't have that kind of money.
the crutches versus the AK is kind of a horribly perfect analogy.
Ugh,
But and
yeah.
the thing is that I'm going to go against what is common understanding and blow your minds, but even though the Second Amendment guarantees everybody the ability to have a fucking gun, I don't think everyone should have a fucking gun.
Nobody's going to say that. I don't think.
Well, and so
actually
everyone
literally known
like
someone
if you just raise
nobody
the
here is
amount
what
of
I'm saying.
if you just raise the amount of guns that are in this country,
it's not
going to
do
that
anything.
makes you strong.
No,
because if you don't know how
no,
to fucking use them,
I'm talking about the
and you don't have
mindset, though.
right, and your mindset is fucked, then that more weapons doesn't
Yeah,
make you
no,
stronger.
I never got to finish that thought.
No,
I'm
no,
just saying,
I
like
wasn't-
and those guys are out at the mall. So when that shooter comes there, they're as a society, they're not as vulnerable to it because they have a lot of people who are hardened to it, and they're not looking for any other solution than shoot the fuck back.
Now, I've said on this show before, we don't realize the extent to which Christianity has influenced our culture and Western liberalism. Very, very connected. This just Jesus idea of compassion, giving up your possessions, helping everyone, giving them the shirt off your back. That's a Jesus thing. It doesn't only exist in Christianity, but that's the Christianity is the influence that brought those values to the West. Now,
actually, that's not true.
Yeah,
now,
I'm going to go with
No,
that.
it is
Nietzsche. No, Nietzsche was originally talking about guilt as a monetarily thing, as an owning thing, not as a moral thing. What he was against when
Nietzsche or Jesus? Wait, what?
Nietzsche about the whole.
he
fucking,
thinks I'm quoting Nietzsche here, but I'm not.
What about the way the Native American tribes took care of their own?
Yeah.
like that wasn't Christianity, bro.
Yeah, but
and
we
they
crushed
really
them.
took care of their own.
That's a good point, but they were also. There's a lot of violence in that culture. I don't know if we can say exactly what they were like before
A lot of violence
we
in
got
any
here.
culture.
I know, but I don't think they would have necessarily been on board with the whole idea of like prop up the weakest among you and all these things where we have all these facilities for like retarded people and stuff. That's a Western liberalism thing. Now we can argue this another day.
Well, those
I
babies
feel
didn't
like it's been
survive back
demonstrated
then, dude,
historically.
because
Exactly.
they have a lot of physical
Right,
complications.
What point
right.
did
It's
you
a
get to, though,
different
John?
culture
They
with different
succumb-
values.
they succumb to
Ryan, I'm not
disease.
saying they're worse than us in any way. I'm just saying we are echoing Christian values in Western liberalism. Let's argue it another day. Let's just pretend it's true.
Because you're wrong, but that's why
I'm
we're
not
gonna-
wrong.
Anyway,
Well, it's not-
get
I'm
to your
not-
point.
okay,
You don't
you're
think
right, but
our
it's
moral
not-
system
but
is
it's not
based on Christianity? It's been 2,000 years of European Christianity.
I'm just saying that Christianity doesn't have the fucking corner on the market on
No.
compassion and taking care of your
Certainly
own.
not.
And I would also argue far to the fucking contrary. Because
No,
of like
in
shit
practice,
like
Brian,
the Inquisition
Christians are
and fucking
awful.
Christian
I
backed
know,
genocide
know.
and all that bullshit.
You're
so
absolutely no.
that's what I'm saying.
All right, I didn't mean to represent
Get
it
to your
anything.
point.
Oh,
Western liberalism, I think we can agree with that. Let's leave out the Jesus thing.
It's based on compassionate principles.
right.
Okay, so moving forward.
Did I lose it?
I don't know.
The point was compassion. Look, all right, this was the point. Look at early Christians, right before it became a church, anything. A lot of horrible persecution in Rome. Horrible. Eddie, don't roll your. It was terrible.
I
how
didn't
they were
say
treated.
anything though. Finish
First
your point.
100 years, thrown to the lions in the Colosseum by the Romans.
Right, and I agree with that. That's
and
horrible.
martyrdom became a thing in Christianity. It wasn't big in Judaism. It wasn't big in a lot of other pagan religions and stuff. It became a thing in Christianity. Like Jesus, emulating their leader, martyrdom was a thing. Martyrdom, by most rational calculations, there's a very inner spiritual power to it, but it's weakness, right? It's vulnerability. So that's my point.
Shiny and chrome is vulnerability, man?
Liberalism came from Christianity. Christianity leads inherently to weakness, to vulnerability, to not fighting back. Turn the other cheek, everybody. This is in the book.
Yeah, so is beating the shit out of people if you don't like what they're doing.
So is the East influenced by Western Christianity?
No. Well,
Eastern
yes, but
civilization is
no.
not influenced by Christianity.
Look,
because they're very much about turning the other cheek and giving,
Yeah.
not attacking. Someone attacks you and you give stuff up. You're into nothing. You don't believe in.
Yeah.
You don't have
Buddhism-
attachments to things.
right,
And
Buddhism is another
So
thing.
I don't understand the difference between that and Western civilization.
No, all I'm
and
saying
how
is
it
I didn't
all-
say
and how
Christianity was the
Western
only
civilization-
road to weakness and liberalism. I'm just saying
No. But
both.
I would say
Buddhism and Christianity.
do you think Buddhism is weak? Do you think those
Yes.
ideas in Buddhism are weak?
No, I don't.
No,
That's
you
not
don't think
my.
they're weak.
That's not my value judgment on them. Like they're bad people because they're weak, or
you're
Christians are
saying
bad people, or
liberalism-
liberal. I'm saying that Buddhism and Christianity, at their hearts, interpreted correctly, lead to vulnerability and weakness.
But vulnerability is not weakness.
Well,
We've already
that's-
determined that.
right? Well, That's a good point. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, when we look at our culture, right, and we say all people like me who grew up in the suburbs, white guy with resources, we're soft. We're softer than our forebears, right? And I think we all know our culture is soft right now, and I'm trying to figure out which value systems have resulted in that. And by connecting liberalism to Christianity and Christianity to Buddhism, these are different paths.
Why do you think we're softer?
Wow. I mean, we don't have the hardships growing up. We don't have to go out at night into the potty.
Are you asking what the evidence of it is, or the why?
We don't go barefoot.
Are you like pathology or symptoms? Like the things that show you that we're weaker.
He's asking me to demonstrate that we're weaker, and I'm saying.
But I'm just asking because you're telling him why you think we're weaker. Are you asking?
No.
What are?
I'm giving the symptoms too.
Yeah, but I'm asking. If he's asking for the actual evidence of it.
Yeah, I'm giving
an example
the
you just gave is we don't have the hardships,
right?
And that makes us softer and weaker to have less hardships.
Certainly. Joe Rogan talks about this all the time, right? He talks about how comedians are generally messed up people. They had a messed up childhood, father left, beat them, etc. And then he says it's a paradox because that made me who I am today, and I'm a very successful person, and I've had all these opportunities, and I'm so grateful for it. And now he has daughters, and he's like, it's a paradox to me because I want to give them everything they need. I want to make their life as good as I can. But am I stealing away from them the opportunity that I had by having a fucked up life? Because that, dude, adversity does produce greatness sometimes.
What I'm asking is if you're saying we're weaker because we don't have the hardships, where does liberalism tie into there? Except if your argument is liberalism removes hardships, in which case...
I do, yeah. Classical liberalism has led to prosperity, which takes away hardships,
I don't think you're talking about classical liberalism, though. I think you're talking about today's interpretation of it and the extreme of it. And I think the places where you're talking about it making us weaker is how, everybody's so offended by everything. Like everybody's feathers are ruffled. They need safe. We have to have safe places. And that was never a thing.
Hold on. Okay, you just brought up safe spaces, and I'd like to bring that up because I'd like to talk about. I
don't even know what that is. I just threw it out there.
No, I think it's a great example because I think that classical conservatism relies on confidence. It relies on, and that's how you get demagoguery of the kind, and I'm not calling conservatives
false confidence.
That gets you more the Hitler-esque. That gets you more, let's blame an other.
Right.
We're awesome. Let's,
and we're not vulnerable to immigrants because we've closed the borders.
Right.
We're not vulnerable.
That's that flip side of that
would be conservative.
Stalin didn't have any of that?
Wait,
that would be conservative.
One at a time.
Are we saying that Stalin didn't have any qualities like that? Is that what we're saying?
No, and I would argue
that
Stalin
was
wasn't classically liberal.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was a dictator. It was a one-party system.
But he was on the left, and Hitler was on the right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
he
like
was
this
socialist.
idea that confidence only flows from one direction politically is a little misguided, I think. And what I would say, your idea that liberalism adds to weakness or tends to go to weakness is not from compassion. I mean, these are all possible parts of it.
Right.
But then, like Brian said, you have people that are very easily offended and not secure then in what they actually believe and what their tenets are, because anyone challenging anything that they believe, oh my God, no, you can't even say that. Or the idea that there can be no actual enemy, that anyone that is possibly an enemy, oh no, you don't understand them, and they need to be protected. And
guys,
that leads to weakness too.
That's a very articulate and insightful point to end on. I hope I illustrated what my question is.
We should come back to this.
Yeah, because I don't know the answer. I'm just saying there's
maybe that'll be good for a
plausible
Christmas episode.
Yeah, there's a plausible link between liberalism and vulnerability, I think, and feminine values as well. Which these are as a liberal, these are the things I embrace.
But
I'm just saying there might be a plausible link between that and vulnerability. And what do we do about it?
I don't think it's the values. I think it's the interpretation and the real world application of what people perceive those values to mean in the real world. Because none of those things are bad.
Cool.
Well,
and those would all be qualities that Bushido would approve of, which is the warrior code.
Yeah.
I don't think the idea that we can
benevolent compassion,
that you can get rid of vulnerability. It's actually is a correct idea. Like,
Yeah.
vulnerability doesn't mean anything except for you can be attacked.
Right.
Yeah.
And guess what? Anyone, anything, any whatever can be attacked.
A grizzly bear
At
is
any
vulnerable
time.
to
Yes.
a porcupine.
Yeah.
Not as vulnerable as other things, but he's still vulnerable.
I
Part
think
of our
we're,
problem is we're really, really, like I've said a bunch of times, disconnected from the fucking world we walk on and the things that live around us that aren't human. We're
think,
disconnected from nature. It's bad. We forget we're part of the food chain.
I think we've touched on a lot of interesting stuff here. I don't think we can claim to have gotten to the answer of this particular question, but I did want to give you an example of how if I turn my philosophical mind to liberalism, I can find deep, deep problems that might be fundamental.
Let's go there for a minute.
So next week we're going to talk about our good buddy Abe Walters, great contributor and former guest of the show.
Smart guy.
Smart
I
guy.
don't know him that well.
Lovely fella. Sent us a link about riot gear for protesters, which is all the stuff that you can kit yourself with to like block signals of police, of their radio signals, and make Wi-Fi hotspots in the middle of like a protest area, and like upload video in real time so no one can delete it and take it away from you. Facial recognition,
You get
masks that stop facial recognition technology.
You get 2 receipts with it. One is for the product, and the other one is for which slot you have on the no-fly list.
Yeah.
Well, also, how do we know this isn't part of a COINTELPRO program?
A lot of
We'll
interesting.
talk about that later.
More about mind control next week as well. Government mind control. Is the MK Ultra program really over, or has it moved on to a new way of trying to control the minds of enemies?
As opposed to Operation Mindfuck,
Yeah.
which was that was Ken Kesey, wasn't it?
We're gonna talk about all this crazy stuff next week, folks. I don't know if is next week the Christmas. It's 2 weeks from next week is the Christmas episode.
Next weekend, if I come,
Next week's
if
the
I'm,
21st.
it'll be next week is the 20th. It's my birthday.
Oh
next Sunday.
snap! Oh, and happy birthday to Eddie West.
It's your birthday?
Yeah, last
A couple
Saturday.
days ago. Yeah.
Oh,
Right
on.
before last show that I had to miss.
Yes.
It's your birthday.
And finally,
Ancient.
call to action. We are going to do a new segment next week called Viewer Something or Other, and you guys are going to give us questions. So anyone listening to this, please, if you must have a question or at least a comment about why we're idiots and what we've said today. Give us what your comment or question. We will discuss it on the air, name you by name if you so choose. And please get in there to the Facebook page, or message me, or Brian, or Mark, or Eddie, anyone. Just get in touch with us. Give us some questions. We want to get into that stuff on the air and find the radical agnostic answer, or lack thereof. So thank you guys for listening. And
How much do you like sucking dicks?
Ooh, Baba Booey. So that'll be it, guys. 41 next week. See you then.